All right. Thanks for joining us here on Folkin Around the World. On today's episode, we got kind of a special treat for you. We have the Celtfather himself, Marc Gunn. He's going to be talking about some of the things that he's been working on, a little bit about his long history in the Celtic music business, and he's got a lot of great tips for folk musicians, whether you're just starting out or whether you've been in the game a while. So make sure that you watch the whole video. He's got a lot of very helpful insight to share with you guys.
I wish that you were here with me to sail the sky serenity and take me high or take me low to the end where I may go. If I can stand, then I shall pass beyond this night of black, pass beyond this night of black.
Marc, why don't you just start off, introduce yourself a little bit about your history and the kind of folk music that you play.
All right, my name is Marc Gunn, and I do Sci-Firish music.
Nice. I like the new moniker. It fits really well.
It does. I've been playing Irish drinking songs and folk songs for forever, and now it's a when I started combining it with science fiction and fantasy music, I needed something. I was doing Celtic Geek for a while until like at the beginning of this year, I went to a pub and this guy says to me, so you're the guy who plays Sci-Firish music. And I was like, why? All my marketing experience, and I can't come up with that myself. I don't know what's wrong with me.
It's just one of those things. Sometimes the fans know better than you do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, you've been playing for a while now. So tell me a little bit about what drew you initially to folk music, to Celtic music, and kind of how you got started.
Destiny is the answer. I was born on St. Patrick's Day, which incidentally is also St. Gertrude's Day. And I bring up St. Gertrude because she is the patron saint of cats. And I have a CD called Irish Drinking Songs for Cat Lovers, which I found out about St. Gertrude's Day after the fact. So March 17th was my birthday. So I was, born on St. Patrick's Day, grew up. My dad was big into folk music, but I was not. I was pretty much into, popular music of the 80s and Elvis Presley, a little bit of some of the 50s and 60s, and then got into at the end of in the 90s. I had starting a band and was in a couple different bands. My last rock band broke up, and I decided I was going to start playing the auto harp and doing something different. And one of the songs, maybe two of the songs I had were Celtic in nature, if you will. One was called The Irish Ballad by Tom Lehrer, which is a comedy song, which is much more like Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, if you're familiar with that. And the other was a more Enya-esque type song called Lounging in La La Land. My song lyrics sucked at the time, so I started doing, trying to figure out where I fit in, and where I fit in ultimately was when I was playing on the South Mall at the University of Texas, and someone said they heard me playing these songs and said, "Hey, you want to play at a Renaissance festival?" And that's where I got my start. It was where I immersed myself in Irish drinking songs and fun music. So yeah.
So what did you play? You said you were in a rock band before you started playing the auto harp. So what did you play there? Were you a vocalist?
I was a vocalist, and I played guitar for a little bit, but I was crap. I'll be honest.
It's okay. I'm still crap, and I've been playing for 8 years. So.
I was not good at it, and again, my songwriting. I started playing music because I wanted to be a songwriter, and my songwriting was really bad. That's all there is to it. It was just I was writing about shoelaces, and it might have worked great if I had figured out about the kids music genre. I might have cleaned up. But generally my songwriting was just not very good. But when I started playing the auto harp, I learned that the auto harp, I I found that number one, it sounded absolutely beautiful. No one was playing it, which appeals to a big part of me being somewhat unique. And then, of course, as I'm strumming the song, the music, it just creates the melodies sort of pop out in my head, and I just found it very easy to write songs. And then I started writing, story songs, which kind of really took me to a whole new direction. So
So, who are some of your big inspirations, both like in the kind of folky Celtic genre, and I mean, you mentioned a couple of the ones that are outside of it, but if you've got any more.
So I guess my earliest inspirations are Christy Moore. Basically, when I was playing in the South for 2.5 years, I think I played on the South Mall of Austin, at at the University of Texas at Austin. Every lunch, I went out there with my auto harp and I played music. And then Andrew McKee joined me almost immediately, and that's when we started the Brobdingnagian Bards. And we played out there every week, and basically people would start coming by and they'd be like, "Oh, can you play this song? And can you play this song?" I think we had a couple songs as it was, and they said, "Can you play this song?" And I'm like, "Well, no, I can't." And then next thing you know, some guy gives me a cassette, and it had the Wolf Tones, it had Christy Moore, it had a band out of PA, though I didn't know it at the time. The Molly Malones. Was it the Molly Malones? The one of the writers wrote the Ghost of Molly Maguire's. So I don't think of the band was the Irish Balladeers. That's the band. They were called the Irish Balladeers, and they had the song called "The Ghost of Molly Maguire's" and a whole bunch of fun songs. That those were, and a cassette that I had. There was some cassette that I picked up at Half Price Books, which had 10 Irish drinking songs, and in like 15-20 minutes of time, they were just doing one after the other as this live setting. And that was a huge inspiration for me, because it also determined how I wanted to later record some of my music, giving that live feel, even if it wasn't necessarily in a live setting. But those were my inspirations, and I started taking these songs and going step by step, learning all these different songs. And half the time it was like, well, I think I could sing that song better, because you think of like the Wolf Tones, Derek Warfield, who has just absolutely horrible voice, a beautiful, wonderful, but horrible voice, and he was like, so early on, I'd hear these voices, I'm like, God, I can sound better than that. I can sing better than that. Surely I could do something better. And that's how I first learned it. Obviously the voice of these guys are just spectacular in their own unique way. And Derek Warfield has gone on to be a big part of the Celtic music community, and especially in the U.S. with his band, the Young Wolf Tones and whatnot. But all this huge influx of music that I got there, that I just started incorporating into shows. And obviously playing at Renaissance festivals, you meet a lot of bands too, you learn some songs there, you pick up along the way. But yeah, those are my early inspirations.
Yeah, that's great. Like, I think that's one of the things that like I really love about Celtic music is that like you don't have to have an American Idol style of voice to be successful, right? You
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
like it's really about like having character and texture to your voice. So like Derek Warfield or like Ronnie Drew from the Dubliners, like it's
Right.
about like some texture and grit. Like it brings you
Yeah,
into the songs.
yeah. And it's I noticed one thing, like early on also, it's like comedy music. Comedy music, you don't have to have a good voice at all. It's because it's about the joke, it's about the song. But sort of, if you're telling a good story, you don't necessarily need a great voice either. You need a good story. So if you have a great story that people are going to resonate with, that's ultimately the number one thing that's gonna sell. And even I think about Derek Warfield. While I remember his vocals, from his early albums, like Irish to the Core, not being pretty. It's not like they were out of tune that I can recall. They just weren't pretty, So there's that aspect too. I think, it's still some great music. Yeah.
So you've touched on this a little bit. What do you think makes great folk music, or makes a great folk song, in your opinion?
Oh, there's a million different factors. Obviously, when I've been doing music business and music marketing for years, and the number one thing that most music marketers say is that you've got to be, have a great song. And I disagree with that point. You don't necessarily need to have a great song. You don't necessarily need to be a great vocalist. You don't necessarily need to be a great musician. You don't necessarily need to be a great performer. But any one or multiple of those things will push you further. Early on, when Andrew and I started, I listened back to our first CD. It was a pretty well-produced CD, sounded pretty good. There's a lot of intonation issues. Listening back to it now, I hear things out of tune all the time. But what we had was chemistry. We had a great show. We got up on stage and people got really into our music and laughed and sang along and had fun. And that is ultimately what really made a lot of our stuff. Now, as we developed our performance, we got better as musicians too. We got better as singers too. All those things start adding on to it, and having something at the beginning, I think, helps. Now, to get to the next level, I think you need something more. Maybe having that brilliant song certainly helps, because again, a lot of the music world is focused around singles. It's around a great song about something about it. It's not necessarily a great storytelling song. It might not be a great folk song, but a great song in some form or fashion. Everything from rock music has all these. They're all, you got more poetry that comes into rock music, whereas the folk music is more of the stories. And I have found personally that me writing poetry is not great. It's certainly not putting it into song form. But writing songs with stories that really seem to capture people's imaginations and make them more interested than certainly, for me at least, than the poetical songs.
So
Yeah.
in terms of like stories and lyrics, like you've written about a ton of different things over your career so far, and I'm sure that there's going to be some other crazy stuff coming down the pipeline. But what are like some of those like big ideas that intrigue you the most? What are some of like the big ideas in stories or in lyrics that you find yourself coming back to time and time again?
And mainly, my favorite is writing the classic folk song. I've done this many times, but I waver a lot between different stories and themes. But having a completed folk story, I did, I wrote a murder ballad years ago, and it tells a very short story, in a fun, humorous way, about a murder, which I think was a lot of fun. But love songs have always been a thing with me. I grew up on Elvis Presley, so I like to write those. But if I'm writing love songs, those love songs have to have it helps when they have, again, a complete story. You have the beginnings, setting the stage, and then the development, and then the more development, and then the denouement. When you get to that climax that gets people like, you know excited to realize the conclusion of the story. But thrown in between is all the catchy, sing-alongable lyrics and choruses, which is one of the things that I absolutely love. When I tell people I do sci-fi drinking songs or something, what that means to me is it's not about the drinking, it's about the sing-along. It's about having a good sing-alongable chorus that people can get involved with. And you get that in some songs, and I think a lot of the best ones. From when I was growing up, I still to this day, actually, not even just when I'm growing up, I've never been one to uh, remember the verses to most songs that you hear on the radio. I don't my I don't hear them well enough. I think it's something about the way I hear. Uh, I pick out the vocal melody usually. So the lyrics frequently are lost on me entirely until we get to the chorus. And a good catchy chorus has always been one of the things that I've loved. Something that people can sing along with and remember. And of course, great melody.
Yeah, I mean,
Those
I
are
think
definitely.
singing along is it's part of that. Like, I don't know, you always get at a good at a good folk concert, right? There's always that like sense of community, and I mean,
Yeah.
the drinking helps, but it is. I think you're right. It's really about singing along, and whether or not you're drinking, like you can still be a part of it. And I think
Right.
that's one of the things that's really cool and really powerful.
Yeah.
One of the things that you've been really successful at and really spanning 20 years or maybe more, I don't mean to date you too much, but is your ability to really mobilize your community on the internet. So could you talk about like some of maybe the like you've got really diverse like crowdfunding stuff going on now, and like you really have been on the scene selling your music over the internet digitally in a time before most bands were doing that. So like how have things changed and what are you doing now?
Um, well, one of the first things that I remember reading, so I early on, about 97, I started, that's about the time I started reading marketing articles. I was looking for music marketing, not finding a whole lot. So when I started the Bards especially, I spent a lot of time thinking about um, ideas of ways to promote one's music. I immediately got into, because every internet marketer at the time was doing it, was email marketing was very big. So I was, first thing, I think musicians at that time also were doing a lot of mailing lists, snail mail marketing, and I didn't have the money, so guerrilla marketing, keeping it cheap was the ideal way of doing it. And most people had emails at that time or were getting emails. So I started collecting email addresses and developing that. Uh, the other thing that I learned from some of these marketers was that pretty much anything that you are willing to uh, that you give away for free, you can charge money for, and vice versa. So giving away MP3s was my number one way of promoting myself early on. With the Bards, we got on mp3.com. You had the option of selling MP3s, or you could let people listen, stream them, and whatnot. I found that their algorithm, I learned, uh, allowed you. So if you streamed the music and then you downloaded a song, even if it was for free, you'd make more money. So and climb higher in the charts. So I optimized how to promote all my music to get people to do just that. And so consequently, my music we shot up to the top. By the time the site closed, we were like one of the top 20 bands on mp3.com. But the charting was all based around these algorithms. So that was an early thing, but it was also based on giving away music. So when mp3.com closed down, I said to myself, are we going to stop giving away free mp3s? I don't see why we should. We don't have a site for giving them away yet, but it seems like a logical move to keep giving them away. So we did. And, I was doing a lot of other stuff, search engine optimization and websites. You could game Google to some degree and get people to go to your site if you created a quality site. So I had like Irish song lyrics, Celtic lyrics that people could go and listen to the songs and learn how to play them too, which I think I've come to realize as another thing that was a big thing about the Bard's success too, is that we had a way for people to not only find our lyrics, but they could play along, learn to play the songs that we popularized in our community. And that I think made a big impact on our success early on. Obviously, over the years, things change, and I continued to adjust. So, I was one of the first to get into podcasting, the second Celtic podcast, but the longest lasting, and the biggest of them, mostly through search engine optimization, keyword marketing. The Irish and Celtic Music Podcast is the name of it. Very easy. What's this about? But I started a bunch of podcasts, and not all of them were nearly as successful as that one. So, and then of course, I've gone to video, and I keep moving around with the marketing to figure out but things that are constant. Email is constant. I have my own blog, which is no longer as effective, but the podcasts are really effective for at least attracting people in, and hopefully, finding my community. It works sometimes. Video is obviously the biggest thing that's these days, both live streaming as well as video singles, just releasing individual songs on YouTube, which I haven't done nearly enough of, and that's my bad. So
It's tough to keep up with. I mean, that's why I invented this program.
yeah.
So you have how many albums between like your solo stuff and the Bards? About how many albums have you released to date?
I think over 40 or 50.
Yeah, it's a pretty insane
I have
number.
24 solo albums. I think that are not compilations that are listed on my website. The Bards have released our 10th studio album, and then there's been a whole bunch of small little projects that I, speaking of search engine keyword optimization and such, I spent a little bit of time for a while working on that idea. So there's a bunch of singles that were released, some EPs, some CDs under different names. There's a bunch of different projects. Most of them have ended up on one of my albums, I think. But yeah, there's been a lot. So I'd say 40, maybe 50 things I've released.
Of all of those albums, I'm going to put you on the spot here. What is like one of your favorite either albums or songs, and tell us a little bit about why?
One of my favorite albums probably is Don't Go Drinking with Hobbits. I've always been a Lord of the Rings fan since 6th grade, when I discovered the Rankin and Bass cartoon and fell in love. And I even in the whole idea behind hobbits, this small little people. I've always felt small, and I was the guy who was, when my brother and I would pack ourselves into a car, I was like, I can sit in the back in that little tiny little spot. Yeah, I'm small, and celebrated that. So there's that aspect, but it also it has a very homey feel. The most over half the lyrics, I think, were written by Ree Sheridan Rose, who is an author who we met at a Renaissance festival, and she wrote a song, gave me some lyrics, and I ended up setting it to my own music, and it was the name of my first CD, Soul of a Harper, and it was ended up on the Brobdingnagian Fairy Tales, or the Brobdingnagian Bards. But it was, she and I have collaborated a lot over the years, but it's just a fun, happy album of hobbity music, which includes things that I absolutely love. The some of the drinking song type stuff. There's some traditional style tunes. Playing in Irish music, I love traditional Irish music, the instrumental tunes, but I'm mostly a singer. I can play a little bit on the other harp, but I'm mostly a singer. And so I got a fiddler on it, Samantha Gilogly, and she and I tear at it. We wrote our own tunes for the CD. Ree, when she was writing some of the songs, I would give her some ideas of similar type songs that I wanted, like A Well-Dressed Hobbit is inspired by Rattling Bog. Raise a Glass and Parting is inspired by Parting Glass. So they're all they have these mixed match of musical similar cousins, I guess you could call them, and just it was just nice having that. And every few years I go to an event in Central Kentucky called A Long Expected Party, and we uh it's a bunch of Lord of the Rings geeks who who get together for a weekend to celebrate our love for Lord of the Rings. So it's just kind of a fun thing. But that's just like one of the many, because each album has their own songs that I really love. I mean, like my favorite song that I've written is a song called Name on My Soul, and it was released on my old band, Kilted Kings, a different band. We released an album, and that song it's a love song I wrote for my wife. And it's a great sing-along. It was written as sort of a jam band uh, idea inspired by the Soul Doctors. They have a song called Claire, Will You Meet Me on Clare Island? And Summer Sun Out in the and it's a total jam song, and the band is a jam band, a jam band from Ireland. And that was something I wanted. I wanted something, the song that you could just riff on if you wanted to, and I don't have many songs like that. It also is a very danceable song, which is in college I was in ballroom dancing, and I love dancing, so it's a song that I get to dance to, and I can dance to because it's really easy to play, and it's fun. It's got a great rhythm, you know. So there's a whole bunch of songs that I absolutely love that I'm playing, and I started working on a Firefly podcast with my friend Mikey Mason, and there I've written like several songs that I'm absolutely and totally in love with, because they capture another aspect of thing that I love, Firefly. But because we're writing songs inspired by episodes, and I say inspired, the songs are not necessarily, they're universal themes. So we take themes from those episodes and write a universal theme. Like one of the first songs that I wrote was Serenity Valley Waltz, and it's the song that a soldier basically sings after they come back from war and are haunted by the memories of the trauma that occurred while they're fighting. And it's not necessarily about Firefly, though it is, but it's just a great song. It's a great way, a song about recovering from trauma. So it's
Well,
been fun writing stuff.
yeah, I think that's one of the things about like good sci-fi and why Firefly is so good, right? It's I mean, it is a cool sci-fi show, but it also has a lot of universality to it that
Yeah,
sometimes more high concept sci-fi they can miss that mark a little bit.
yeah,
So moving on a little bit. So the last couple months have been weird for everybody.
yeah.
Um, how has that affected you, and what have been some of the things that you've been doing to stay busy and stay active in the music community for the last couple months?
Well, things changed obviously for me, but it's been a bit different because um, I typically work from home, so working, this is nothing has changed on the aspect. I'm still making podcasts. I'm still working on music. In fact, probably the best thing about this is that I feel like I've been working a little bit more on music. I spend a little bit more time working on writing and songs and cleaning up songs. I've done a little bit of recording, which I haven't been doing nearly as much. I practice a little bit more. I guess some of this has been really good for me in that aspect. The downside, of course, is that I have less time to do, which is not good because I didn't have much time as it was. But now I have less time to actually work on all the different things that I need to work on. So yeah, that's the roughest part from my perspective. Obviously a whole bunch of shows, some of these Gen Con, one of my biggest and most favorite conventions of the year, was just canceled. And they are working on plans on how to do stuff online, obviously, but it's not the same, and I have to figure out how to make it just as entertaining. and that's what I haven't worked out yet. And there's certain aspects, live streaming. So it was something I was already doing for the past couple of years because I was trying to understand things and get better at that. And so I've been working on live streaming already. And because there's an art to actually, communicating with your fans live, or, Andrew has been doing a whole bunch of live streaming recently, but he worked out a different method, which is to basically live stream a pre-recorded show, which also is gives you a great way of interacting with people, a different way, but another just as valuable way. So, it's like, I'm thinking about Gen Con, and they have I had several shows there that I would do each year, and I'm trying to figure out how to redo those shows, but do them so that they are just like, so it takes on a whole new atmosphere where people can experience things differently, so it's just different. A lot of differences there.
How do you think, I mean, none of us have a crystal ball, but how do you think things are going to kind of shape up and reshape over the next 6 to 12 months as we try to get live music back up and running? But obviously it's not going to be able to just kick off in the same way that it had been before all of this.
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways to think of it. Part of the problem here is that, a pandemic, this virus is going to be around for at least 2 to 3 years. That's as a big deal for a couple of 2 to 3 years. Obviously the impacts are being felt across the country, already, across the world probably. But so that's immediately in itself. But the simple fact was that one of the reasons we did social distancing was to keep our system from being overwhelmed. And now our system is better able to handle stuff. We get another spike, and we're going to have to probably go back to this, to social distancing and quarantining again. But eventually, unless a vaccine comes out, we're talking about everyone basically getting COVID-19 at some point, which, really sucks. Hopefully we can get a vaccine really soon, but, at some point, live music will come back in some form or fashion. I already have my first show is actually booked, and I'm looking at ways. So I'm playing at this place called Tucker Brewing Company at the end of June, and fortunately they have a big stage far removed from the audience. They've removed most of their tables, so they're working out ways to work with their clientele while there's with music and all that stuff, and it's not going to be easy. It's I'm like thinking about CD sales. How do you sell a CD so people aren't going here, I'd like to buy this one, but you can keep this one. No, thank you, I don't want it. So how do you deal with that? And so I'm trying to work out ideas to be able to say, oh, you can go look at all the CDs and pick your CD from an app from Bandcamp on your phone, and then pay for it there, and I'll hand you a CD, and blah. It's a method. I don't know if it'll work or not, but you try different things. People adapt. We adapt to change, whatever it's going to be. So, and that's what we're working on.
What's some advice that you might give to younger artists who are finding themselves, just as they're starting to kind of get into the groove and getting gigging and things, and now they're kind of stuck here? What's some advice that you give to them to kind of help continue growing their fan base and getting their music out there while we're in a situation where they can't play live, or when they can play live, there might be some extreme limits on the size of their crowd?
I don't think there's any difference, honestly, than when it was. The biggest challenge is that now you really have to promote yourself online. I mean, that's really the biggest difference. Beforehand, I think of a lot of it's usually the guitarist, the lead guitarist, who's like, yeah, I can't handle all that stuff. I'm the guitarist. I'm gonna play, that's all I do. And there's the drummer, booking all the stuff and doing most of the work, or whatever. Um, but but that's not the way you can do it anymore. Now that guy has to say, okay, I'm going to also get online. We'll find a way to do something. We still have to build a mailing list. We still need a website, because you can't rely on social media, which is going to just some social media site will no longer be used anymore in the next 6 months, because for whatever reason the world changes. It's going to continue to change. You need a mailing list. You need a website, and you need a way to communicate with people. Find whatever that is, and push it as hard as you can, and repeat. uh, that's the number one thing in the business is, find something that works and do it over and over and over and over again until you're sick of it. And hopefully you never get sick of it, otherwise you're probably going to not survive in the music business. But it's just about continuing doing what you've been doing, right? Keep writing songs, keep recording, keep releasing. um, you might realize, our society has also been changing because of streaming. Streaming music has just totally revamped the way the world looks. People, I did try to actually ditch CDs a few years back, but if I was starting over, I don't know if I would release a CD at all. Maybe I might do a short run, maybe, but I'd probably focus on just releasing digital music and saying, hey, if you want to hear my music, go here. If you want to buy something, I have this stuff here, and they will still buy, because again, whatever you give away for free, they will also pay for. So that's one of the things I'd do is I would just, release an EP. I'd probably go, there's a number of marketers who suggest, releasing singles and EPs, and I'd probably go that route. I would just start releasing a new single every month or every 2 months if I couldn't handle every month. Put together a full length album at the end of it of, the best of them, of the tracks, and then probably not put it out on CD anytime soon. Wait a while until you actually have a following and can do something with it. But then find some sort of product to sell, because merch is still probably the number one way most musicians make money. So yeah, that's probably what I do.
Nice. So it's plugging time. You've got a lot of places where people can go to support you, find your music. Give us the scoop on all of your different areas.
So Celtfather.net will take you to everywhere. CELTFATHER.net.
And I'll have that link down in the description below.
Yeah. But that has a link to my podcasts. So I have the Irish and Celtic Music podcast, the Pub Songs podcast. That's my personal podcast where I, talk a little bit more and about what my music and whatnot. I play songs and whatnot. The Irish Celtic Music podcast, I play music from other Celtic bands. I have a video channel. You'll find videos, my top videos and links to all those, so you can watch those. Free MP3s, you can get those while you're there. You can even get a free CD. You just pay the shipping, and I'll guide you into that through that. Every Wednesday, I do a show called Coffee with the Celtfather on Facebook right now. And I basically, it's my busking show where I get online and I play 5 songs and hopefully make a few bucks, playing music that way. But it, see what happens with that. But there's a whole bunch of different methods. And then of course my website, the blog, you get over there as well, marcgunn.com. But again, it's all at celtfather.net. Sign up for my mailing list. Like I said, you need a mailing list. Social media. I'm primarily on Facebook for social, but I'm going to keep trying other things. I don't like most of the others. Don't like Facebook, but hey, you need something.
Don't try going on TikTok. It's the worst, most terrible thing I've ever seen in my life.
So, social media is one of those things that people tell the marketers talk about, you got to be on social media, and I'm like, no, you really don't. I don't agree with that statement per se, because I kind of feel like if people really love what you do, they will follow you where you want to be. Now, certainly I have found that using Facebook ads, you can get new followers, get new people listening, and possibly buying your stuff. So, it's a good way of getting the word out, but it's not the only, it's not the end all be all. And if if you really don't want to be on social, I don't blame you. If I was better, I'd probably be on Instagram. If I was better at photography, but I'm just really crap at it. So, I use Facebook because that's where most of my fans are, and they're somewhat more active there. But, you ultimately, the goal of a musician is to inspire change. Marketing is about inspiring change, creating change in people, and making people so excited about your music that they will say, I'm going to share this with the world. And if you can get someone to do that, then inspire someone to do that, then you'll have a successful career. So that's my best advice there.
Awesome. That's I think a great way to to wrap this up. So Mark, thank you very much for joining me. It was great to see you. We haven't really talked
nice
face to face in a while.
Yeah, I know. It's been far too long though since I was back in Colorado. I was trying to get back to Starfest this year, and now I'm trying to look at next year, but who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, we'll just have to see, but hopefully we will see you then. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
My pleasure. All right, sláinte.
All right, thanks again to Marc Gunn for joining us here on Folkin Around the World. In the meantime, if you liked what you saw, hit the subscribe button. And as we always say, if you don't like it, tell somebody that you hate to subscribe to this channel. Please leave any comments or questions you have below, and we're going to try to get to all of those. Any questions that you have, happy to address those. We really want to build community here on the Stubby Shillelagh's channel. So anything we can do to help you, whether you're a folk musician or just kind of an indie musician trying to get into the game, we want to help you. We want to talk to you about that. So we hope to hear from you. And until next time, sláinte.